Now, for more on this, I'm joined by former Facebook Australia CEO Stephen Shearer. He was going to be on video, but I don't know, do we blame Facebook? He has to resort to being on the phone. Stephen Shearer, thank you so much for your time in joining me. Your reaction to this thuggery from your former employer, Facebook.
Yeah, good to be here, Andrew. And I can't blame Facebook. I'm actually on holidays up in the beautiful North Queensland part of Australia, so I don't really have good internet, but so we thought we'd just jump on the phone. My reaction, look, I'm probably as shocked as anybody, Andrew. I mean, frankly, many of your points of view I don't fully agree with, but on this one, I think I do. I think this is a case of overreach, bullying, and we shouldn't just take this lightly as Australians. Despite my accent, I am Australian, but I've been worried for a while, as have many others from Silicon Valley and elsewhere, about the power of big tech to shape our opinions and how information gets disseminated, and as you allude to, who's muzzled and who's not. And I think whether it's specific decisions, whether you agree with them or not, I think the bigger point is that we just can't leave this in the hands of a company that essentially has almost more power than our own government does. And I think we're seeing that here today.
It's extraordinary, isn't it, Stephen? Why do you think it's acted quite this aggressively?
I think Facebook is probably, if they're trying to fight a long game here, and the long game is to try to forestall regulation all around the world, not just in Australia, but in Europe, the U.S., even individual states within the U.S. are now trying to bring the hammer to big tech. And so, this is just one of those kind of battles where they say, well, here's a hill we need to try to stand on and make sure we don't give up. And, Australia is setting an example by this legislation to say, hey, we're going to set up some rules here that we feel are right for our country. But Facebook said, no, we don't agree, and therefore, we're going to bring out the big stick.
Honestly, it seems like Australia's of just the right size for Facebook or China to make an example of us for the rest of the world. We're big enough to be a warning and small enough to beat. Do you think we'll win? We'll win or they'll win?
Well, sadly, yeah, you're right about that. Unfortunately, at the moment, it's look, who will win? I don't know. But I think there's few questions everybody needs to ask themselves, and it doesn't matter what side of this debate you come down on. I think here's a couple of questions you should ponder. What if this was a Chinese company that did this? Now, right now we're in a somewhat fraught relationship with China, but what if a Chinese company was in the same position? They controlled a big part of our information ecosystem, and then they flicked it off overnight because they were unhappy about a negotiation going on with government or with commercial parties. That would send a chill down our spine, of course, and I think that would be a diplomatic incident of the highest order. But here we are. We got Facebook doing it. And the second thing to think about is, if you are unhappy with, or if you agree with Mark Zuckerberg, or if you agree with Scott Morrison on this, well, at least with Scott Morrison, you can go to the polls and make your opinion known. You can vote for him or against him in the next election. But on the Facebook side, you can't. You can't vote for him or against them. In fact, even if you're a Facebook shareholder, even if you put billions of dollars into Facebook, you have no control over what Mark Zuckerberg does. He can't be removed from his job. He can't be controlled by his own board. And to me, that is one of the biggest problems here. We don't have the kind of accountability that we need in a democratic system.
We still have a market system. Capitalism is still a form of democracy. I know it's you're taking on an absolute behemoth in Facebook, but for Australians with Facebook pages are now feeling a bit nervous about all this flicking on and off, what alternatives are there out there?
There's always alternatives, Andrew, right? There's other websites, there's other social media options. They're mostly much smaller than what Facebook is. Maybe some of them will grow more as they get more usage. But the reality is, Facebook's the big gorilla in this space. It's very hard for life to go on for a lot of particularly small businesses in Australia without Facebook. And so, it's terrible news if that ecosystem gets interfered with, not just for news in general, but for users and for businesses. But that, to me, says that there's a social responsibility now on Facebook that goes beyond mere business, because they are so critical to the health of the Australian economy and information ecosystem. They have an extra responsibility, and that responsibility should include not, casually, accidentally, supposedly turning off, COVID information and bushfire information and other pages that have nothing to do with this news code that the federal government's bringing in. I think that's just completely just reprehensible that happened overnight.
Stephen Shearer, well, we have been warned by you, and more particularly by Facebook. This is quite serious. Thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure, Andrew. Take care.